Welcome back, troglodytes, to the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we have another one of Gibson's Super Strats, but this time Gibson didn't design this guitar. It was designed by a guy named Wayne Charvel. Does that sound familiar to you guys? Yes. But don't read too much into that. This isn't Gibson saying, hey, build these guitars for us because we're clearly incompetent at building Super Strats. This was actually a model part of Gibson's Artist Signature series. This featured guitars from people like Les Paul, Chet Atkins, B.B. King, Howard Roberts, as well as Johnny Smith. So having Wayne come in and design a special model for just himself, it wasn't necessarily out of the ordinary, but this guitar will always raise quite a few eyebrows as far as its history is concerned. Of the WRC models, there appears to have been 3 different major runs. There's your run-of-the-mill standard, which is this one. Not too much going on here besides it being a Super Strat. There was an iteration called the SR71, better known as the Showcase Edition WRC. Those ones were white and they came stock with EMG pickups. The Showcase series also had Les Pauls, SGs. I've actually featured a few of those on my channel. And they're quite interesting guitars made from 1988 through early 1989. And then the initial 200 of these guitars were actually signed by Wayne on the truss rod cover and then numbered 1 through 200. So when people advertise these guitars, you're going to see it all the time. Only 200 made, only 200 made. Really rare guitar, buy now. Okay, just remember, it's 200 in that series. So there has to be at least 600 of these things kicking around, and I don't even know if I got all the different series. But essentially what these things are, they're an HSS styled pickup. These are actually stacked humbuckers that still sound like single coils, and then a traditional humbucker that you can coil split. But they came stock with a licensed Floyd Rose. This thing's kind of interesting. It's not the type that you have to cut the ball ends off. It kind of strings up just like a Strat. And then these things right here, they kind of flip up, and this is what locks your string into place to kind of keep the tuning there. And of course, you also have the locking nut. Body shape, super familiar. What's kind of ridiculous about this one is you have a super fin right here. Usually on a Strat, you'll have a little bit of a carve right here, but this one, I mean, it's quite extreme, but I kind of like that. It is comfortable to play. But something that I don't personally like is they have an extreme cutaway right here. But it's so extreme, it almost doesn't work at all anymore. Let me kind of show you what I mean. When you hold the guitar up against you, you see this? The Comfort Carve doesn't even hit me anymore. So it's almost like you don't have one at all. I would have to be doing a crazy whammy trick like this to even get it to rest against my body. Now, if you're a larger guy, that might come in more handy than it does for me, but that's a small complaint that I have about the design. But there's one more cool little Comfort Carve here. It's by the neck heel. Now, I understand what this is meant to do. It's supposed to make it easier to play higher up in the fretboard. Personally, though, I don't think it does anything because you still have the heel right here that stops you from going any further. So before you really even reach the Comfort Carve part, your hand's kind of already stopped. You do reach it a little bit, but I think there's definitely better designs that came about afterwards and by different companies. But you can see there is a little bit taken off of the heel, so they were at least attempting to make a better guitar. These pickups, when I took them out, they look like they were made by Bill Lawrence to me. I'm not 100% sure on that. Some people said yes when I did research, others said no. What makes me say they're Bill Lawrence designed is they are epoxy coated, so you can't actually get inside of these pickups if they break. And that seems to be like a Bill Lawrence trait when it comes to building Gibson pickups. The body itself is made out of alder. you have a maple neck on these with an ebony fretboard, which is amazing. You could find these in red, like this one, black, as well as white for the Showcase series. But the one last interesting feature here is the headstock. This is not a very Gibson looking design. Well, that's because they didn't design it. But if you think this thing is freaky, take a look at this old advertisement that shows pretty much one of the very early prototypes of this guitar. This was not the original design. Look at this headstock. That original design's freaky. It almost looks like it had a mother of pearl Gibson logo though. So that would have been interesting. So in comparison, this thing seems kind of mild. But you have an interesting script Gibson logo here. And you have WRC on the truss rod covers. This is not his signature. This is just an embossing on the truss rod. You can find these guitars kicking around 1987 through about 1989. There isn't a huge market for these things, so they're relatively inexpensive. I think the most you would ever have to pay for like a collectible one is about $1,000. But they're obscure. They're interesting. I'm not a shredder. I have no use for a Floyd Rose, but other reviews that I've seen online highly recommend these things, so maybe they are a little bit of a diamond in the rough, but not necessarily for me. So now that we've learned a little bit about the Wayne Charvel Gibson, let's go ahead and hear how this one sounds. Now that we know how this guitar sounds, let's go ahead and review its condition. This thing is a road warrior. Somebody loved this guitar. That said, it's had a really rough life, At some point in time, somebody hacked off this part of the headstock. You can see there's kind of a crack running along there. I'm guessing this has been re-glued. But something that's good to know, you can see it happened right along the seam line, but then it kind of broke off in the direction there. But you'll never have to worry about that because worst case scenario, let's say that just falls off again. It doesn't affect any of the tuners. It doesn't affect the neck in the slightest. If anything, I think the headstock would look kind of cool that way. All you would be missing is your Gibson logo. So it's a non-structural repair, but it's a repair nonetheless. You have your original Grover tuners on here, original truss rod cover. Truss rod works just fine. I actually had to adjust this one. There was quite a bunch of relief in the neck, but it straightened out to where it should be. The frets do show some minor wear. Nothing you'll really have to worry about right away. The ebony fretboard is in good shape. What I really like about this example is look at all this finish checking it has. This is all 100% natural aged goodness on here. So if you're looking for a nicely aged example, this is definitely a good one, but nowhere near collector's grade. You do have some finish chipping in a few areas. There's quite a large gash right here. The pickups work, but I do want to make mention that sometimes when you have multiple ones on, I notice like when I play or like when I do bends, sometimes it sounds like it cuts out a little bit. I'm not quite sure what that's about. It could have something to do with this push-push kind of going bad. So I will be selling this as kind of like a semi-project. You'll probably have to do some additional setup work and maybe replace that pot. But overall, it has a presentable condition, but just some light nicks and dings around the edges. Back of the headstock, serial number 82467627. Again, you have that wing repair line going on. It looks like you've got some stand rash along the edges as well. I would say this is a thin neck profile. I mean, it's not typical super tiny shredder neck thin, but it is a 60s neck profile. Maple neck, obviously it's gone from a nice light maple to a very dark maple because it's been in smoky bars and whatnot. I mean, it has a slightly smoky scent to it, but not a lot. I don't think this was necessarily housed with somebody that was a smoker, just played in smoky environments. You can see the neck plate does read Gibson, made in USA. Got quite a few light nicks and dings on the back, and again, finish checking all over this example. You also kind of have some scratches here, which just kind of look like a continuation of your finish checking, but they're a lot deeper. But everything does appear to be original on this guitar. All the way down to the Strat buttons even. So it's a fairly worn guitar, but I mean, it could be in a lot worse of shape. So issues to be aware of, once again, that pickup thing where you can kind of get a little bit of cutting out. The locking nut doesn't actually seem to lock down anymore. I believe I've located the source of that issue. You see on the bottom two strings how it runs through the top of that locking device, and the ones that don't lock at all are running under that. I believe this was just strung up wrong when it was sent to me, and the next restringing you can just put it onto the top and then it should work the way it is intended. Then of course the push-push thing, it works right now, but you can't use it if the knob is installed. And I would suggest a professional setup because I never have any idea what I'm doing with these tremolo units. There also appears to be a very tiny crack running right at the end of the nut here, and it just kind of stems down a little bit. I can't imagine that would ever spread or cause you any issues, but I do want you to know about it. And as is common with most bolt-on necks, you can kind of see what looks like a crack. And I'm sure it is one, but it just kind of looks like a finish check. I don't notice any weakness to the heel joint at all, but it is there and good to know about. I like the way this thing blacklights. I kind of wish this was the normal color. We'll take a quick look here. You can just see some of those finish chips that we were talking about earlier. But, you know, it's a shredder's guitar. If you like doing that shredder stuff, I'm sure you will like this instrument. And definitely give one a try. But I'm not really seeing anything too major to note here. Just got some light wear. Back of the neck. I will say it feels a little bit sticky, and you can see there is a little bit of finish worn off. So you might want to sand the neck down just a little bit to get some of that sticky lacquer off of it. And you do have that headstock repair towards the top. I don't have a case for this guitar, but you have a Mars gig bag here. It's actually a pretty decent gig bag. It's nice and plush. I mean, it's not a beautiful interior, but it's got some pretty thick padding to it, so I would say it's on par with like one of the newer Gibson gig bags. You have a nice little compartment right here. That's where the trem bar will be when you get this guitar. It's got a slightly smoky odor to it as well. If you think you might be interested in being the next owner of this well-played Wayne Charvel Gibson model, feel free to check out the link in the description that will take you to the Reverb for Sale ad. Thank you, Troglodytes, for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.